He called me convenient. Said I was just a placeholder until he won her back. That same night, in a room full of applause, he proposed to her. And I walked out without looking back. I didn't have a plan. But I had dignity. And somehow in the quiet that followed I found someone. Now my ex wants me back, but it is too late. They say love is blind, but I think mine was anesthetized. 6 years with Ethan Chin had numbed me to everything I should have seen. I had excused the missed dinners, the unreturned texts, the cold reassurances that always followed his absence. Just work, babe. You know how intense these deals get. And I did. I believed him because believing him was easier than facing the possibility that I was slowly being erased from the future he once swore we were building together. I was finishing a marketing deck for an upcoming pitch when it happened. My own laptop was out of commission thanks to a spilled cup of ginger chai. Ethan had left his on the kitchen counter, screen still lit from some midnight email binge. I only meant to use it for a minute. That's when the notification popped up. Derek, did you tell your loyal dog about the ring yet? Loyal dog? I didn't even mean to click it. My finger moved before my mind did, and suddenly I was inside an unfamiliar app. A chat room. For men's names. One of them his. Ethan, not yet. Mira is still useful for now. Once Olivia says yes, I'll handle the fallout. I read it once. Then again. Then again. Useful. Fallout. Olivia. I scrolled. Messages blurred together, but the words stayed razor sharp. She's good for appearances. Investors like stable relationships. She keeps the bed warm while I work on winning back the queen. She has no idea Olivia's even back in town. And then the final knife. Ethan, ring is ready. Making the move at the gala tomorrow. Olivia already knows. The gala. His company's gala. The one I'd helped him plan, the one I had RSVP'd to with my full name engraved on the guest list. The one he insisted I wear the blue silk dress to. As I looked the part. I sat there in the glow of his laptop screen as the sun rose behind the skyline, and I knew. I had been replaced. Not last week. Not even recently. For months. And everyone but me seemed to know. Ethan came home that morning with coffee and croissants, kissing my forehead like nothing had changed. I didn't say a word. I just nodded when he reminded me about the gala. Wear the blue dress, he said, sliding the cup toward me. You know the one. Brings out your eyes. Investors' wives love that kind of elegance. I smiled, brittle and quiet. Sure. The blue dress. He didn't notice the break in my voice. He never did. I had once believed that Ethan's world was mine too, that his startup dreams were my dreams. When we moved into the high-rise together, I thought it was a symbol of what we were building. Now I realized it was just a set. An illusion. At the gala that evening, the room was draped in black and gold, chandeliers glittering like promises. Ethan worked the crowd in a tux, his hair styled to engineered perfection. I watched him from the edge of the ballroom, glass of champagne untouched in my hand. I had planned to confront him. Thought I would pull him aside, expose him for who he really was, end it with dignity. But then the spotlight hit him and the mic turned on. Tonight isn't just about our company's growth, Ethan said, his voice deep and assured. It's also about personal evolution. About building the right future. With the right person. I blinked. Oh. He turned to her then, Olivia Wu. Chinteka's financial advisor. The queen from the messages. She wore a silver gown and a smile she wasn't bothering to hide. Olivia, he said, pulling a velvet box from his jacket. We met before either of us knew what we truly wanted. These years apart made it clear. You've always been the one. Will you marry me? The room gasped. Olivia's hands flew to her mouth in a pantomime of surprise. Yes, she cried. 1,000 times yes. The box opened. Inside was the exact diamond I once pointed at in a window display on Fifth Avenue. Back then Ethan squeezed my hand and whispered, someday. This was someday. Just not for me. Applause exploded around me. The music swelled. Champagne was distributed for a toast. And still I stood frozen, the clink of glasses 1,000 miles away. Only then did Ethan's eyes find me across the crowd. Our gaze met. His smile faltered. For a second, less than a breath, something like guilt passed through his expression. But then it was gone. Replaced by satisfaction. The mission had been accomplished. The dog had served its purpose. I turned without a word, the blue dress swaying behind me, and walked out of the ballroom. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, clean, real. I kicked off my heels on the pavement and walked. No destination. Just forward. 6 years. 6 years of birthdays and holidays, of business trips that were actually rendezvous with her, of me making excuses for his distance while he was calculating the right PR angle for his love life. The humiliation soaked deeper than the betrayal. As I had believed. I had stayed. I had waited. People stared as I wandered downtown in bare feet and silk. But I didn't care. Let them stare. Let them wonder what went wrong with the woman in the too perfect dress and ruined mascara. What went wrong was that I gave 6 years of my life to a man who saw me as leverage. Who built his empire on my loyalty, only to turn around and crown someone else his queen. Eventually, I found a bench in Harrison Park. The fountain gurgled in the distance. The stars blinked overhead like 1,000 indifferent eyes. I sat. And I cried. I cried for the years, for the lies, for the fact that I still loved him even in the wreckage. I cried because I didn't know what came next. That was the hardest part. The not knowing. Everything I had built had been wrapped around him. His success. His image. His world. And now I didn't even know where I belonged. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I braced myself for the inevitable Ethan apology. A soft lie to smooth things over. But the screen said, Claire Martinez. My best friend. I hesitated. Then answered. Mira. Her voice was instantly alert. Are you okay? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then, no. There was silence on the line. Not the uncomfortable kind. The listening kind. The kind only Claire knew how to offer. Where are you? She asked, voice gentle but firm. Harrison Park, I said. Near the fountain. Stay there. I'm coming. She didn't ask why. Didn't press for details. Just said she was coming. And somehow that was enough to make me sob even harder. The wind cut through the thin silk of my dress as I waited on the bench, elbows tucked against my ribs, head bowed. I didn't care how I looked to anyone walking past. My makeup was ruined. My bare feet were filthy. But the real mess was inside, years of dreams torn up and scattered like dry leaves. The sound of a car approaching didn't register at first. It wasn't until I heard the click of a door and the crunch of fast steps over gravel that I looked up. Mira, Claire said, her voice taut with worry. She was in jeans and a long coat, no makeup, hair pulled back in a soft bun. She looked like she'd just come from bed. Still, she was the most elegant person in the world to me in that moment. I'm sorry, I choked out. I didn't know who else to. Don't, she interrupted, wrapping her arms around me. Don't say sorry. Just breathe. I collapsed into her embrace, the floodgates finally shattering. My body shook from the sobs I'd held back all evening. She said nothing else. Just held me. Just let me cry. After a few minutes, she led me gently to her silver sedan, opened the door and helped me in. She turned the heat on full blast, grabbed a blanket from the back seat and wrapped it around my shoulders like a shield. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. Not until we were 20 stories above the city inside her hotel suite. The space smelled of jasmine and peppermint. Calming. Safe. She guided me to the plush sofa, brought me a mug of tea and pressed a warm cloth into my hands. Here, she said. Wipe your face. Then talk to me. The cloth trembled in my hands. I pressed it to my cheeks, smearing away black streaks of mascara and foundation. When I opened my mouth to speak, it all came pouring out. The messages. The chat room. The words that carved themselves into my spine. Dog. Useful. Clean. And then the proposal. I watched him kneel in front of her. Claire, I said, my voice cracking. He proposed to her. At the gala. While I was standing right there. Claire closed her eyes slowly, pressing her lips into a thin line. I want to say I'm shocked. But I've seen him fail you before, Mira. I just didn't think he would go this far. I feel so stupid, I whispered. No, she said immediately, leaning forward. You feel betrayed. That's not the same thing. Don't confuse his cruelty with your intelligence. I stared at her, my throat closing. I don't even know where to go. All my stuff is still at the apartment. My laptop, my passport, my grandmother's jewelry. You're not going back there tonight, she said firmly. You'll stay here. And tomorrow we'll make a plan. I nodded numbly. I don't want to see him, I added. I don't think I could keep it together if I did. You don't have to, she said. I'll help you through every step. Then softer, and as it happens, I might have a solution for your living situation. I looked up. My cousin Alex is flying back tomorrow morning, Claire said. He's just returned from a long humanitarian rotation. He's taking a sabbatical and staying here for a few months. His condo downtown is empty, and he's been looking for someone to sublet it. I blinked. That's convenient timing. She gave a small, knowing smile. Isn't it? There was silence for a moment, then she reached over and touched my hand. You don't have to decide now. But I want you to know, you have a place to land, Mira. A real one. That night I slept in a borrowed robe on a guest bed made of feather pillows and high thread count sheets, the city quiet beyond the glass. It wasn't my bed, but I felt safer in it than I had in months. The next morning I woke to the scent of coffee and something buttery. Claire was already dressed in a crisp navy blouse and slacks, looking every bit the academic powerhouse she'd always been. There's fresh croissants in the bag, she said, handing me a mug. Also drink water. You're dehydrated. I nodded, groggy but grateful. I still feel like I got hit by an emotional semi-truck. That's about right. She sipped her own coffee. But the good news is, you're still standing. I smiled faintly, then asked, when does your cousin get here? His flight landed about 30 minutes ago. He should be arriving any second. I nearly choked on my coffee. Claire, I look like a disaster. You look like someone who survived something brutal and came out breathing, she said. Alex will understand. As if summoned by the mention of his name, a knock echoed at the door. Claire glanced at her watch and stood, smoothing her blouse. Showtime. I stayed frozen in place, wiping my hands on the robe, my heart inexplicably racing. I had seen photos of Alex at her place. Then the door opened. Claire, a deep voice said warmly, and Claire was enveloped in a hug. When she stepped aside, I finally saw him. Alex Martinez was taller than I remembered from the photos. Broad-shouldered, lean, with kind eyes the color of dark caramel. His skin was sun-warmed from years in harsh climates, and he moved like someone who'd seen things and grown steadier because of them. You must be Mira, he said, his voice low and clear. I stood awkwardly, still wearing Claire's robe, my hair damp from the shower, no makeup. Hi, I managed. Sorry. I didn't know you were arriving so early. He smiled, and it was genuine. You look fine. Claire told me a lot about you. It's nice to finally meet. I blinked. All good things, I hope? He laughed, dropping his duffel and holding up a paper bag. I brought your mom's favorite scones from the bakery downstairs. And some banana bread for the guest. Hope you like carbs. I smiled despite myself. Carbs are the only thing keeping me alive right now. Claire chuckled as she took the bag from him. You two sit. I'll get plates. Alex eased onto the armchair across from me. He didn't stare. Didn't ask awkward questions. Just offered quiet companionship in a room where I hadn't expected to feel anything but shame. Your sister said you'd been working abroad, I offered, trying to fill the silence. Yeah, he nodded. Doctors Without Borders. I was in Colombia, then South Sudan, then rural India for a while. Just wrapped up my 5th year. That's amazing, I said honestly. And exhausting, I imagine. He shrugged. Fulfilling. But yeah, burnout's real. Hence the sabbatical. We sat in companionable quiet until Claire returned with plates and napkins. Alex, she said casually as she poured coffee into his mug. Mira's looking for a new place to live. He raised an eyebrow, turning to me with concern but not intrusion. Bad roommate. Worse, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Ex-boyfriend. Very ex. He nodded as if that explained everything. Well, my condo's empty. If you're interested, it's all yours. That's very generous, I said, taken aback. Not really, he said, slicing into his scone. It's either you or some stranger I'd have to vet. And Claire already vouched for you. Claire smiled into her coffee. I stared at both of them, the warmth between them so effortless it made something ache in my chest. This was what family looked like. Honest, open, loving. So different from the performance I had lived through with Ethan. I'd like that, I said softly. Thank you. Alex nodded. We'll swing by this afternoon. I'll give you a tour. And just like that, I had a new place to start over. Not because I had planned it, but because for the first time in a long time, someone had caught me when I fell. We left Claire's hotel after lunch, all three of us in Alex's SUV, the cityscape blinking past the windows like nothing had happened. But inside the car, the silence was taut. Claire was in the passenger seat with her sunglasses on, scanning her phone, but I knew she was watching me in the reflection. Alex drove calmly, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, the other occasionally adjusting the radio volume when it got too loud. I sat in the back with my stomach tangled into knots. My key to Ethan's apartment still sat in my bag, the last tangible string tying me to him. I gripped it so tightly in my palm that the teeth dug into my skin. "Are you sure you're ready?" Alex asked softly as we neared the high-rise. I nodded once. "Yes. I need to get my things and go. That's it." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. We parked outside the building Ethan and I had once picked together, after a long weekend of apartment hunting. Back then we'd stood in front of this same glass door, arguing over whether a south-facing view or walk-in closets were more important. Now I felt nothing but cold. The concierge recognized me instantly. "Good afternoon, Miss Patel," he greeted politely, but his eyes flickered when he saw Claire and Alex behind me. No Ethan. No smile. He didn't ask questions. Just held the door open with silent professionalism. The elevator ride to the 22nd floor was too quiet. Too fast. Too inevitable. I was grateful when Alex finally spoke. "We'll just focus on packing. You don't have to explain anything to anyone, including him." "If he's even there," I muttered. Claire touched my shoulder. "If he is, we'll deal with it." I nodded, the knot in my chest tightening. The apartment door still accepted my key. The soft click of the lock disengaging felt more surreal than it should have. I stepped in first. It smelled the same, cedarwood and clean linen, but it felt foreign now. Like I was trespassing in someone else's home. The throw blanket I'd crocheted during the pandemic was still folded neatly on the armchair. Our framed vacation photo from Santorini still sat on the hallway console. And on the kitchen island was a bottle of wine, half empty, and two glasses. One had lipstick on it. Olivia had been here. Claire said nothing as she scanned the room. Alex gave me a soft glance. "Where should we start?" "Bedroom," I said, my voice tight. I walked in first. The closet was still full of my things. Work clothes, cocktail dresses, cardigans, scarves. All hung the way I'd left them. My jewelry stand sat on the vanity, untouched. I had to work. I pulled open drawers. Stuffed suitcases. Tossed every reminder of a life I once built with someone I now despised. The blue gala dress was the first thing I stuffed into the donation pile. I never wanted to see it again. Alex quietly began folding my sweaters into a separate duffel. His movements were quick, efficient, and respectful. No questions. No awkwardness. Just quiet support. When I fumbled while trying to unhook the necklace stand, Alex stepped in and gently took it from my hands. "These are beautiful," he said, wrapping each piece in tissue paper and placing it in a small box. "They were my grandmother's," I replied. "One of the few things I brought with me when I moved from Mumbai." He nodded with extra care as if handling something sacred. "My sister mentioned you're a jewelry designer," he said. "She tells you everything, huh?" "She's proud of you," he replied simply. "She's kept every article you've been featured in. Even the small ones." I blinked at that. What? Yeah. "And she sent me your portfolios. I remember one collection. Mixed metalwork, minimalist, really striking. You have a style." A warm surprise flickered in my chest. Ethan had once dismissed my work as a hobby. I had spent years shrinking my passion into something digestible for him. But Alex didn't say it to impress me. He said it because he meant it. We were halfway through packing when the door opened. We all froze. "Mira." Ethan's voice rang through the hallway. I heard the keys drop into the ceramic bowl near the door, his steps moving quickly into the kitchen. I stood in the bedroom, breath stuck in my throat. Then I heard his voice again, closer this time. "I've been trying to reach you." He stopped when he saw Alex walk into the hallway with a box in his arms. The charm evaporated from Ethan's face like water hitting hot oil. "What the hell is this?" Alex didn't flinch. "We're just here to pack her things." Ethan looked at me, his eyes narrowing. "Seriously, Mira? You brought people?" Claire appeared then, behind Alex. She stepped into view with the composure of a queen. "Hello, Mr. Chin," she said evenly. "I'm here to ensure Mira isn't harassed while collecting her belongings. I hope you understand." Ethan's gaze flicked from Claire to Alex to me. His jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous. You could have just talked to me. What happened the other night wasn't what it looked like." I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Really? Because it looked like you proposed to someone else. In front of a room full of people. While I was standing right there. It was strategic," he tried. "Olivia's father is one of our biggest investors. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I cut in. "It's betrayal." He blinked, taken aback by the steadiness of my voice. I hadn't realized how much anger had been simmering under the surface until it came rushing out now. "You lied to me for months. Used me as part of your perfect little image. Called me your convenience to your friends." His expression faltered. I saw it then. He hadn't expected me to know. The guilt was there, yes, but it was quickly overtaken by something colder. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said. "Those were jokes. Stupid guy talk. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to get caught," I snapped. Ethan stepped closer. "Baby, come on. Let's talk. Just you and me." Alex moved, slow and deliberate, placing himself half a step between us. Not threatening. Just solid. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Who is this?" Claire answered before I could. "My brother. He's helping." I raised my chin. "We're almost done. I'll leave the key when we go." Ethan's face darkened. "You think you're just going to walk away after everything?" "I am," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. Alex returned to the bedroom without another word, and I resumed packing. We didn't rush, but we didn't linger either. When the last box was sealed, I walked out with my grandmother's jewelry tucked carefully under my arm. At the door I turned. "I'll email you about terminating the lease. Since you could afford that ring, I assume the penalty won't be a problem." His jaw tightened. Before he could answer, I opened the door and stepped into the hall. Claire followed. Then Alex. We rode the elevator in silence until it hit the lobby. As the doors opened, I felt something shift in me. Not closure. Not yet. But a beginning. "You did well," Claire said, resting a hand on my shoulder. Alex nodded. "That was powerful." I gave a small, real smile. "I didn't cry." "You didn't need to," Claire said. "You ended it on your terms." And as we stepped into the sunlight, I realized for the first time, I didn't just leave Ethan. I chose myself. Alex's condo was nothing like the apartment I had just left. It wasn't glossy or staged. There were no curated coffee table books about entrepreneurship or fake succulents from luxury design shops. Instead, it smelled faintly of sandalwood and eucalyptus, and there were real plants. Some thriving, some a little dramatic, in every corner. The floors were warm-toned wood, and a worn leather couch sat under a wall covered in framed photographs. Not stock photos or prints. Real moments. Smiling children in a Cambodian village, a group of medical workers posing in a jungle clearing, a sunrise shot from what looked like a mountainside clinic. It felt lived in. Personal. Safe. "This is amazing," I said quietly as I stepped inside. Alex shrugged, kicking off his shoes by the door. "It's not much, but it's comfortable. Everything's furnished and the Wi-Fi's solid. The kitchen works if you don't cook like I do, which is badly." I turned slowly, taking it all in. "You took all these pictures?" He nodded. "My camera went with me everywhere. Some of the clinics didn't have electricity, but they had sunsets worth remembering." I paused in front of one photo. It was a close-up of a boy laughing, his eyes squinting against the sun, his teeth wide and brilliant against dark skin. "This one," I murmured. "It's beautiful." Alex joined me, looking at it. He'd just gotten a clean bill of health after 6 months of treatment. That smile was everything. I smiled softly. "You have an eye for more than medicine." We stood there for a moment in easy silence. Then he handed me a set of keys. "Building access. Mailbox. Door. I already emailed you the lease docs. You can stay as long as you need." I took the keys, feeling their weight in my palm. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "You've had a brutal week. This is the least anyone could do." "I'll pay rent," I added quickly. "You can," he said casually. "But not this month. This month you just settle." I wanted to argue, my pride flared, but then I saw the expression on his face. It wasn't pity. It was just kindness. No strings. No expectations. Okay, I said quietly. Thank you. He gave me a warm smile, then pointed to a monstera plant by the window. Only request is that you don't let her die. She's dramatic and she's already mad I was gone too long. I let out a soft laugh. I can handle dramatic plants. I've been a creative director for 5 years. My job is 80% aesthetic drama. That pulled a chuckle from him. Then you'll get along just fine. We didn't stay long. Alex said he wanted to give me space to unpack and breathe. He left behind a few pieces of mail and a sticky note on the fridge that read, Wi-Fi password, Compass 123. I unpacked slowly that evening, sorting boxes by category. Essentials, donations, memories. That last box was the hardest. Inside were remnants of a life I'd once believed was permanent. Photo booth strips, handwritten notes from Ethan, old travel itineraries, postcards from places we said we'd visit. A dried rose from our first anniversary. I didn't cry. Thought I would. But I didn't. Instead, I took the entire box, walked it down to the building's trash room and set it inside the bin. Gently. Purposefully. I didn't need souvenirs from something that was never real. The days that followed passed like a quiet exhale. I didn't go back to the office right away. I had called in sick, which technically wasn't a lie. I wasn't ready to return to a place that bore Ethan's fingerprints. Not yet. Claire checked in often. Sometimes it was a text. How's the plant? Alive, I hope. Sometimes it was a voice note. Made your favorite tea today. Thought of you. Sometimes it was a silent Uber Eats delivery with a note that just said eat. Alex, true to his nature, kept a respectful distance. He texted once. Alex, hope you're settling in. Let me know if the monstera starts drama again. I replied with a photo of the plant, captioned, currently behaving. I think she likes me. A few days later he dropped off a care package. Protein bars, fuzzy socks and a mini toolkit. For when the IKEA furniture inevitably turns against you. I laughed, really laughed for the first time in days. One evening, a week after the move, I stood in the living room with a cup of chai in my hands, looking out at the city. The skyline was different from Ethan's apartment. Less flashy, more grounded. I liked it better. Behind me, my sketches were scattered across the table. Concepts I hadn't touched in months. Jewelry pieces I'd started and abandoned. Ideas I'd shelved because Ethan didn't think they were commercial enough. Here I didn't have to ask for permission to create. So I opened my sketchbook. And I drew. Not for a deadline. Not for a client. Just for me. By midnight, the table was covered in pencil lines and ideas, and my tea had gone cold. My back hurt from leaning over, but I didn't stop. Because for the first time in a long time I felt like myself. That weekend, Claire invited me to brunch at her place. Alex was there, sitting on the balcony in a hoodie, cradling a mug of black coffee. He smiled when he saw me. Hey neighbor. Hey landlord, I teased. Claire raised an eyebrow at us both. Are we going to pretend I didn't orchestrate this entire situation like a master chess player? I laughed and Alex grinned. Subtle sister. Very subtle. We spent hours talking. About travel. Food. Books. Bad coffee. Good design. Life. It was easy. No performance. No tension. No pretending. I didn't talk about Ethan. And no one asked. That night as I walked back into the condo, I realized something strange. I hadn't thought about Ethan for almost the whole day. Not once. I stood in the entryway, staring at the quiet warmth of the space that was now mine. I was alone. But I didn't feel lonely. And for now that was enough. A week after I moved into Alex's condo, I finally opened my work email. My thumb hovered over the icon for a long time, half expecting an explosion, half dreading the silence. When it loaded, there it was. Subject: HR meeting request. Urgent. My heart clenched. The message was formal, clinical, and signed by Vanessa, my boss and agency director. Hi Mira, we've received some concerns from a key client regarding your recent conduct and involvement in a conflict of interest. Please come in Tuesday morning at 10:30 to discuss. There were no details. But I didn't need them. I knew exactly who the key client was. Ethan's company, Chintech, was our agency's second largest account. I had brought them in years ago, back when I believed in Ethan's vision. Back when I thought we were building something together. I should have felt afraid. Instead, I felt insulted. He was trying to take the one thing left that still felt like mine. Tuesday morning, I dressed with precision. No soft knits or modest layers. I chose sharp lines. A crisp white shirt. Charcoal slacks. A slim belt. Gold earrings, delicate but unmistakable. The armor of a woman not here to beg. I walked into the office with my head high. Some of my coworkers stared, eyes wide with curiosity. The news hadn't broken yet, but people could smell tension. Vanessa greeted me in the HR conference room with a tight smile and clasped hands. "Thank you for coming in," she said, motioning to the seat across from her. Sitting beside her was Daniel from HR, whose expression was already apologetic. "Not a good sign. We've had a complaint," Vanessa began, her tone stiff. "Chintech has raised concerns about your personal involvement with their executive team and suggested that your continued presence on the account poses a liability." I blinked. A liability? "There were references to your emotional instability after the gala," Daniel added awkwardly. "Apparently you made a scene?" "I walked out," I said evenly. In silence. Vanessa wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mira, I want to be clear. We're not questioning your professionalism. But Chintech is. A multi-million-dollar contract," I said. "And I'm not." She hesitated. "I wish it were simpler." "It is," I said, reaching into my folder and sliding over an envelope. Vanessa opened it. "My resignation. I'm not going to fight for a place that won't even ask for my side of the story," I said quietly. Vanessa looked up, face flushing. "Mira, please don't misunderstand. We value you." "You valued Ethan's business more," I cut in. "I understand completely." I stood. "My desk is already cleared. You'll have my handover notes by the end of the day." Neither of them spoke as I walked out. And for the second time in 2 weeks, I left a building thinking I might break. But again I didn't. Because I wasn't falling. I was walking away on my own terms. I didn't cry in the elevator. Or the lobby. Or even when I walked out into the bright spring sunlight. But when my phone rang and I saw Alex's name, I felt everything catch in my chest. "Hey," he said as soon as I picked up. "How did it go?" "They believed Chintech," I said, swallowing. "They didn't even ask for my side." "Did you walk?" "I did." "Good," he said. I blinked. "You think so?" "Mira, you just saved yourself months, maybe years, of soul damage," he said calmly. "You left with your integrity intact. That's always a win." A silence fell between us. Then he added, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What do you want to do now?" The question stunned me. Because no one else had asked. Not Vanessa. Not HR. Not even myself. "I don't know yet." "Well," he said, "I might have something." That afternoon I met Alex at a quiet cafe tucked into a side street in Soho. He was already seated at a corner table, sipping an iced coffee and flipping through something on his phone. "Okay," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Tell me your mysterious plan." He smiled. "I have a friend. Leia Chin." My eyebrow twitched. "No relation to?" "None," he said quickly. "Total coincidence. I promise." I exhaled. "She runs a design studio," he continued. "Ethical fashion. Sustainable sourcing. Very mission-driven. They're expanding their accessory line and looking for someone with both branding and product design experience." I blinked. "Wait, how do you know this?" "We went to med school together for a year before she pivoted to design," he said with a half smile. "Long story. Point is, she mentioned the need during a call last week. I told her I might know someone perfect." My chest tightened. "Alex." "No pressure," he added quickly. "She said she'd meet with you if you're open to it. That's it. No expectations. You still get to decide." I sipped my chai latte slowly, watching him. "You really don't like seeing people stranded, do you?" He grinned. "Call it a flaw." I looked down at the steam curling from my cup. "I don't want another job that flattens me. I want to make things again. Real things." "Then maybe this is it." 3 days later, I sat across from Leia Chin in a sun-drenched corner office above a storefront in Tribeca. The space was filled with plants, fabric samples, and unfinished prototypes. She wore a black turtleneck and gold nose ring, and her smile was sharp but sincere. "I've looked at your portfolio," she said, flipping through my leather-bound book. "Mixed metals. Bold symmetry. Understated edge. You've got a clear voice." I tried not to choke. "Thank you. We don't hire cookie-cutter creatives," she said. "Our brand's not about mass appeal. It's about meaning. Would that be a problem for you?" I laughed softly. "Meaning is what I've been chasing." She nodded once. "We'd start you on a trial basis. 2 months. Creative consultant for our spring accessory line. If it works, we go long-term." I didn't even hesitate. "I'm in." My first day at Conscious Design Collective felt like stepping into sunlight after years in a dark room. The team was young, diverse, and passionate. The hours were long but flexible. And best of all, I got to create, sketch, build, present, revise. No one asked for Ethan's name. No one cared where I had been. Only where I wanted to go. By the end of the first week, I had pitched 3 designs. By the second week, they asked me to lead the branding narrative for the capsule collection. "I want to call it The Unfolding," I told Leia during our Friday meeting. "Each piece will represent a phase of becoming. Grace in transition." She leaned back, impressed. "That's strong. That's exactly what we need." Walking home that evening, I passed Ethan's old office tower. I didn't stop. I didn't look. I just kept walking, keys in hand, toward the building where the Monstera waited for water, and my new sketchbook waited to be filled. The week after I started at Conscious Design Collective passed in a haze of reclaimed purpose. I spent long hours at my desk, sketching, prototyping, and refining ideas that had been lying dormant inside me for years. There was something sacred about creating again without censorship, without bending to someone else's narrative. It was like getting reacquainted with my own voice. And yet it wasn't just the work that grounded me. It was the quiet rhythm that had settled into my personal life, one I hadn't expected. Most evenings I returned to Alex's condo to find something small that made me smile. A new plant on the windowsill, a sticky note with a food pun, or a well-loved book left on the coffee table with a bookmark halfway through and a post-it on the front that said, "This character reminded me of you. Fierce, funny, and way smarter than everyone else." He didn't hover. He didn't ask for attention. He just showed up in these small, thoughtful ways that didn't demand anything in return. It was refreshing. It was rare. One Thursday evening, I came home late after finalizing color samples with Leia. My feet hurt, my blouse was rumpled, and all I wanted was tea and silence. But the moment I opened the door, I stopped short. Sitting on the kitchen counter was a potted cactus. Not a regular one. This one had googly eyes glued to its little ceramic pot and a name tag that said, "Clive. Drama level, moderate." I stared at it, then burst out laughing. There was a folded note tucked behind the pot. "You've conquered Monstera. I thought you were ready for your next boss battle. P.S. He doesn't need water, just attention. Like me. Alex." I picked up Clive and placed him on the windowsill next to the Monstera, who was, at the moment, looking proud and leafy. "Welcome to the jungle," I muttered to him. That night I texted Alex. "Mira, Clive is deeply offended you called him moderate." "Alex, he's saving his drama for the weekends." "Mira, he fits right in." "Alex, so do you..." That last message sat on my screen for a while before I typed back. "Mira, thanks for making space for me." "Alex, anytime. Really." The weeks that followed brought a comfort I hadn't experienced in a long time. Every Sunday, Claire hosted brunch at her brownstone, and somehow it became routine for both Alex and me to attend. We drank too much coffee, ate warm croissants and awkwardly shaped pancakes, and talked about everything from ethical medicine to terrible movie sequels. We became easy. Not us. Not yet. But something quiet. Something strong. At work, my capsule collection began to take form. I named each piece after a verb. Begin. Rise. Let go. Remember. The final design was a cuff bracelet made of twisted silver and bronze, an homage to roots that coil around each other but never strangle. When Leia approved the prototypes with a proud grin, I felt something swell in my chest. I was doing this. On my own. A week before Alex's birthday, Claire casually mentioned during brunch, "He's turning 35. Don't let him pretend he's not emotional about it." Alex snorted. Says the woman who cried when she turned 32 because her hair didn't behave that day. It was symbolic, Claire said with a sniff. And you were being rude. I laughed into my mimosa, then turned to Alex. Are you having a party? Just dinner, he said, shrugging. Nothing big. Can I bring anything? He looked at me over the rim of his glass. Just you. It was said lightly, but something about it stuck with me the whole ride home. That night I sat in my little studio nook, formerly Alex's guest room, now filled with trays of beads, tools and design sketches, and began working on something just for him. I chose silver, cool and steady like him, and began shaping the metal into 2 matching discs. Each cufflink would hold a map etching of a region he'd worked in with Doctors Without Borders. Not exact replications, just artistic impressions based on the stories he'd told me. The clinic by the river. The mountain village. The desert outpost where he spent 6 months teaching maternal health practices. I wanted him to see himself in them. Not just as a doctor, but as a man who showed up. For strangers. For me. When I finished, I wrapped them in handmade paper and tied the package with a thin leather cord. And then I waited. His birthday dinner was at Claire's house. When I arrived, there were only a handful of guests, a few colleagues from the hospital and Claire, beaming and bustling around in a floral apron. Alex opened the door with that same easy grin I was beginning to associate with home. You came, he said like it was a surprise. You said bring myself. I followed instructions. I handed him the package. He blinked. You didn't have to. Open it, I insisted. He did. And for the first time since I'd met him, Alex Martinez was speechless. He held the cufflinks in his palm like they were something sacred. These are. He looked up at me, eyes shining. You made these. I nodded, suddenly shy. They're not exact maps. Just impressions. Based on what you told me. They're perfect, he said quietly. The rest of the night passed in a blur of laughter, birthday cake, and stories I already felt like part of. Alex's colleague teased him about a disaster camping trip. Claire raised a toast and called him the most stubborn, brilliant, compassionate human to ever break a bone in 6 countries. But somewhere in the middle of it, while everyone else was distracted, Alex leaned close and whispered, "Thank you. For the gift. For being here." I looked at him and smiled. For the first time in a long time, I said, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That night, after the last guests departed and the candles burned low in the dim dining room, I stayed behind to help Claire clear plates and refill coffee pot. The warmth in the air felt like a cocoon, soft and safe. A stark contrast to the whirlwind of events in my life over the last 2 months. Alex hovered by the kitchen doorway, cautious but present. He caught my gaze and offered a quiet smile that said more than any words could. I'm here. It was a lovely evening, I said, placing the final plate on the sideboard. He walked over, taking the plate from me before I could protest. Thank you. For tonight. And for the cufflinks. The words came gently, laden with gratitude and something deeper. An unspoken connection we both felt but didn't yet dare to name. Happy birthday, Alex, I echoed softly, my voice weighted with sincerity. He stepped closer, clearing his throat. Mira, would you like to grab a coffee with me sometime? Just the 2 of us. Suddenly my heart fluttered. My lips curved into a small smile. I'd like that. It was late when I finally headed back to the condo, the soft hum of the city a comforting undertone. Sleep had long escaped me, replaced by the afterglow of possibility. I walked in to find Clive, my googly-eyed cactus, perched expectantly on the coffee table. I laughed and gave him a nod of approval. You looked after everything okay while I was gone. Good job. I sank onto the couch and reached for my phone, which vibrated incessantly in my bag. 13 missed calls. 1 text. The sender, Olivia Wu. My chest tightened as I opened the message. Olivia, Ethan's in the hospital. Came in from a high fever and malaise, but they're keeping him for tests. Asked for you. My breath caught. My hands trembled. He asked for me. Alone in the echoing quiet, I felt the familiar swirl of old habits. Guilt, obligation, confusion. I didn't reply. I didn't call. Instead, I tucked my phone away and closed my eyes, trying to hear something true in the darkness. The question that always stops me, what do I want? The next morning, Sunday brunch was quiet. Almost contemplative. Claire welcomed me in with open arms as usual, but I was distracted, my thoughts flicking to Ethan, to Olivia's message, to questions I wasn't ready for. Alex arrived with 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. "Fill me in," he asked gently. I shifted on the couch, taking a sip and staring out the window. Olivia texted. "Ethan's sick and in hospital. She said he asked for me." Alex sat beside me. No judgment. No expectations. Just presence. "Do you want to go?" he asked softly. And then added more quietly, "If you do, I can come with you." The weight of both the message and the offer made my chest tighten again. I stared into my coffee as memories flashed. Ethan's betrayal, my grief at the gala, the way I had walked out and never looked back. I saw how far I'd come. A lump formed in my throat at the thought of walking back through doors that had marked my lowest points. "He didn't treat me well," I finally whispered. "He used you," Alex said. "Waiting for someone else, calling you a toy." I closed my eyes and exhaled. "But it's him. And I don't know if I can just not go." "You don't owe him anything," Alex said firmly. I stared at him. His fierce kindness lit something in me. "What do you want?" he asked. I blinked. "What I want," I whispered. Sounded like a prayer. I looked at Alex, brown eyes steady, honest. "I don't want to go," I said. "Not with him. Not alone. And not at all, maybe." He nodded slowly. "Then you don't have to." I didn't surprise him. But his quiet acceptance surprised me. "I want closure. My own kind of closing." I stared out at Claire, who watched me with infinite empathy. But I wanted on my terms. Alex's hand brushed mine, gentle reassurance. "Then let's do that." By Monday morning I had a plan. It was simple, quiet, but entirely mine. I texted Olivia. "Mira, I'm sorry to hear Ethan's unwell. Please give him my best wishes. But I'm not going. This chapter is closed. I hope he feels better soon. I need to focus on moving forward. No, I love him. No, I hope you understand. Just this chapter is closed." And then I deleted the text thread. Alex came over that evening with a pot of jasmine tea. We sat across from each other in the quiet condo. I told him what I'd written. He nodded, relief and pride in his eyes. "That's brave," he said. "That's strong." I exhaled. "I feel free." He leaned forward, his voice low. "Then I wonder where you might like to go." I looked down. I didn't used to know what I wanted. But lately I felt myself again. Alex smiled softly. "So whatever you choose, I'm here." I reached across the coffee table and laid my hand on top of his. "Thanks for asking me," I said. "No pressure to have anything figured out yet." "None at all," he promised gently. In that moment I realized that boundaries weren't walls. They were doors. And I had just stepped through mine. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like the main character in my own life again. And beside me, someone who wanted to walk with me, not lead me, not hold me back, just walk. It was the first Friday night I hadn't dreaded in months. No deadlines. No damage control. No panicked clients or awkward couples dinners where I smiled on cue while Ethan bragged about things I had built behind the scenes. Just quiet. Possibility. And a man who never once asked me to shrink. Alex texted around 5 p.m. "Alex, wear something you feel like yourself in. And bring a jacket. We might walk." No clues. No pressure. Just the kind of text that made my pulse speed up in a way I wasn't used to, something more than excitement. Something like peace. I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual that evening, not to impress him but because, for the first time in forever, I actually wanted to show up fully as myself. No curated versions. No softened edges. I wore a simple navy jumpsuit, cinched at the waist with silver earrings and a soft gray wrap. My hair was loose, curling naturally around my face. No red lipstick. Just balm. Just me. When I opened the door, Alex stood there with that same warm grin he always wore, this time paired with a denim jacket and a tiny box in his hand. "What's this?" I asked, eyeing the box. He hesitated, then handed it to me. "It's not jewelry," he teased. I'd never dare upstage the designer. I opened it. Inside was a small antique compass pendant. Silver, delicate, with a smooth backing and a glass-covered dial that still turned. I looked up, blinking. "Alex." "It's not fancy," he said quickly. "But it's real. It belonged to a woman I met in Nepal. She said it brought her home when nothing else could." My breath caught. I figured, If you ever feel lost again, maybe this will help. I closed the box carefully, heart swelling. I don't even know what to say. Just say yes to dinner, he said, that teasing smile softening. And maybe a walk after. I say yes. He took me to a tiny rooftop bistro in Brooklyn. A place strung with lights and tucked above an old bookstore. No signs. No noise. Just a perfect view of the river and the Manhattan skyline. We talked over fresh gnocchi and lemon tart. No interruptions. No heavy confessions. Just the slow unfolding of two people getting to know each other on a night that wasn't about fixing anything. He asked about my favorite childhood memory. I told him about Diwali at my grandparents' house, how the sky used to explode with light and my cousins and I would sneak extra sweets. I asked about his worst surgery story and he told me with mock horror about sewing up a fisherman in Malaysia who had tried to remove a hook from his thigh with a wrench. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. And when the check came, I reached for it instinctively. He raised an eyebrow. Feminist reflex? I nodded. Also, you bought me a compass. We split it. After dinner, we walked along the riverfront in silence for a while. The city sparkled across the water, and the spring air carried just enough chill to make me pull my wrap tighter. Alex glanced over. Cold. A little. He shrugged off his jacket and draped it around my shoulders. Better. I nodded, the warmth of it and him soaking through. We stopped at a bench near the water's edge. For a while we didn't talk. We just watched the lights ripple and fade in the current. I've been thinking a lot about what comes next, I finally said. Professionally. Everything. He turned slightly toward me. Any answers yet? I took a breath. For a long time I thought I needed someone to tell me who I was. That love meant anchoring myself to someone else's definition of home. Ethan made me feel like I had to earn every part of our life. Alex stayed quiet. But lately, I turned toward him. I feel like I'm learning to define things on my own. I'm not looking for someone to save me anymore. He nodded slowly. That's good. But I do want someone who'll walk beside me, I added, voice low. And never ask me to disappear. He met my gaze. I would never. The silence between us grew heavy, charged, but soft. And then, slowly, gently, he leaned in. Our lips met like a question finally answered. There was no rush. No frenzy. Just two people who had taken their time to find their way to the same page. When we pulled back, my breath was shaky. I didn't mean for that to happen tonight, he said, his voice rough around the edges. But I'm not sorry. Neither am I. Later, back at the condo, I stood at the mirror and touched the compass pendant now hanging around my neck. Its weight was small but grounding. A symbol not of being found, but of finding. Finding myself. Finding peace. Finding someone who didn't rescue me, but reminded me I had always known the way. Alex left for the Philippines 10 days after our first kiss. It wasn't sudden. He'd been preparing for weeks. Paperwork, travel clearances, remote site coordination. He told me from the beginning it would only be a 3-week relief trip with a mobile clinic set up after the typhoon. Still, when I dropped him off at JFK, I hated the quiet ache that bloomed in my chest the moment he disappeared into security. Promise me you'll be safe, I said, hugging him tighter than I meant to. He held me for a second longer than necessary. Always. I'm coming back to you. And just like that, he was gone. Life didn't pause in his absence, but it certainly felt quieter. I threw myself into finalizing the unfolding collection. Leia had scheduled a showcase with a boutique gallery in Soho, and I'd been asked to speak during the press event. Each piece on the tray in front of me told its own story. Rise, remember, let go, return. I hadn't yet named the final one, but I was circling around the word anchor. Something about it felt right. Not because it tethered you, but because it held you steady while you faced the storm. Every night, Alex sent photos when he had signal. Smiling with children. Sitting beside elders. One was blurry and taken in the rain, his hair drenched and a wide grin across his face. He captioned it, Alex, found out they call me the walking stethoscope. I laughed for a solid minute before I responded. Mira, tell them I said you're the charming disaster. Alex, I like your version better. He told me they played cards at night. That he missed real coffee. That he kept Clive's photo on his travel pouch like a mascot. And then for 2 days, nothing. No photos. No calls. No texts. On the third day I was in the studio arranging samples when Leia poked her head into the room. "Mira," she said gently. "There's a call for you." I wiped my hands and crossed the room to her office, confusion rising. "Who is it?" "A woman named Maria Martinez," she said softly. "She said she's Alex's aunt?" My stomach dropped. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers. "Hello. Mira." Her voice was tight, trembling. "Sweetheart, it's Alex. There's been an accident." The words fell like glass shattering in my ears. He'd been riding with a nurse and a driver to a neighboring village. A landslide from unexpected rains hit the vehicle. The driver and nurse were okay. Alex had been pinned and knocked unconscious before being airlifted to a hospital in Manila. "They're stabilizing him," Maria said quickly. "He's conscious now but concussed. He asked for you." I was already packing before she finished. Claire insisted on coming with me. She met me at the airport, suitcase in one hand, boarding passes in the other. We didn't speak much on the flight. But at one point, as I sat staring out the window at the endless stretch of clouds, she reached over and quietly placed her hand over mine. "I've never seen him care for someone the way he does for you," she whispered. "That matters." It did. When we landed in Manila, everything moved in a blur. By the time I reached the hospital, it was almost midnight. The air was heavy with humidity and antiseptic. I gave Alex's name at the desk and followed the nurse through quiet corridors until we stopped at room 319. He was propped up on pillows, a bruise stretching across his temple and his left arm in a sling. But when he saw me, he smiled, weak but unmistakable. "There's my compass," he whispered. I choked on a laugh as I rushed to his side. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try not to get caught in another landslide," he joked weakly. I kissed his forehead. That would be a good start. I spent the next 3 days at his side. We read. We talked. We played cards badly and watched international soap operas with half-understood subtitles. Nurses kept peeking in with amused smiles, and one finally whispered, "He talks about you like you hung the moon." I felt it in his eyes. But not everyone was thrilled to know I was still breathing. On the second evening, I checked my phone for the first time in hours, and found a message from an unknown number. But I knew the tone. "Ethan. Didn't take long, huh? I'm in the hospital for days and you're off playing Florence Nightingale for your new pet project. Guess you weren't that devastated after all." Figures. I stared at the screen, rage bubbling in my throat. I hadn't spoken to him since the day I'd shut the door on that part of my life. He was still trying to twist the narrative. Still trying to make me feel small for choosing peace over chaos. I clicked block without replying. Then I deleted the entire thread. And for the first time, I didn't flinch when I did it. Alex glanced over from his bed, raising an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" I took my phone away. "Just deleting things I don't need anymore." He reached out with his uninjured hand and I walked over to him, curling my fingers into his. "This," I whispered, "feels like the life I never thought I'd get." He looked up at me with that quiet, steady gaze I had come to love. "And this," he said softly, "is only the beginning." Alex came home 3 weeks later, bruised but healing, a little slower on his feet, but still the man who made me laugh at the most unexpected moments. He insisted on carrying his own bag through JFK until Claire finally rolled her eyes and took it from him. "You just got out of a hospital, drama king. Let someone spoil you for once." "Technically," he said with a grin, "I've got Mira for that now." I flushed as Claire smirked. "I'll pretend I didn't hear that." The moment we walked into the condo, everything felt smaller and brighter somehow. Clive the cactus sat in the same spot, stoic and mildly judgmental. The monstera had grown 2 new leaves. And there on the kitchen counter was the compass. Alex picked it up slowly, turning the pendant between his fingers. "I didn't take it with me," he said quietly. "Felt like bad luck to carry something that precious into a storm." I reached for it and fastened it around my neck. "You're not the storm," I told him. "You're the home." The days leading up to the capsule collection showcase were a blur. I'd been preparing in the background while Alex recovered, but now that he was back, he helped with everything, from setting up lighting for the gallery to making sure I remembered to eat. He even ironed the display fabric after I spent 2 hours debating velvet versus linen. "You care about details," he said, smoothing the last corner. "That's not a flaw." It's how people know you were here. The night before the event, he stayed up with me while I made final adjustments to the anchor bracelet, the final piece in the unfolding collection. It was silver with subtle wave patterns etched along the cuff. Inside the band, I engraved something only I would know. You held. I grew. Showcase day arrived crisp and clear, with golden sunlight spilling across the Soho gallery floor. People came in waves. Stylists, editors, curious collectors. Leia gave a speech. The press took photos. And then she handed me the mic. I stood at the front of the room, a little shaky but smiling. This collection is called The Unfolding, I began. It's not just about jewelry, it's about transformation. About how we carry loss, love, endings, and beginnings all at once. How we make space for new stories without erasing the old ones. I paused and met Alex's gaze across the room. These pieces were born from grief, yes. But more importantly, they were born from becoming. The crowd clapped softly, warmly. And just as I stepped down, Leia leaned over. You killed it, she whispered. Also, you might want to turn around. I did. Alex stood behind me holding the compass pendant in one hand. His eyes were warm and steady. But his other hand was in his pocket. My heart stopped. He pulled out a small velvet box. No audience gasped, he wasn't making a scene. It wasn't the center of the gallery or some dramatic stage. Just a quiet corner. Just us. I've been thinking, he said, voice barely above a whisper. You were right, some people are the storm. But others. He reached for my hand, gently placing the compass pendant into my palm. Their true north. He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Gold. Matte. A small engraving I recognized instantly. Still becoming. Will you marry me? He asked. No rescue. No pedestal. Just, side by side. Tears welled up. Not the broken kind. The healing kind. Yes, I whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto my finger as the gallery lights shimmered around us. No applause. No flashbulbs. Just a compass, a man, and a woman who finally knew which way was home. A book. A year later, we stood together on a quiet beach in Big Sur. Just us, Claire, a few close friends, his parents, and enough wind to make the waves roar like they were singing for us. I wore a pale blue dress with silver accents. He wore cufflinks I made just for that day. The compass pendant still hung around my neck, just beneath my collarbone. He kissed my forehead as we read our vows, each word a promise of presence, not perfection. And when we danced under the stars, I whispered into his ear. I found my true north. He held me tighter. And I'll never let you drift. The end.